This is a California juniper. It's our oldest tree. It's 200 or 300 years old. The California juniper is an example of a tree that's sexually dimorphous. There are males and females. This is a male. We can tell because it has not berries, but these little pollen cones. And the pollen cones shed pollen, which goes through the air and ends up landing on a female tree somewhere and fertilizing it. We see this tree has a lot of deadwood on it. Junipers grow in nature with a lot of deadwood. Junipers compartmentalize toxins in the heartwood of the tree that are the resins, the same, and so for the same reason that you use redwood, which is a conifer, very similar to a juniper, the same reason that you use redwood for decking is that it has resins in the wood that protect it. Fungus will not eat it, very resistant to fungus. Termites won't eat it. And so conifers, like redwoods and also junipers, when they have deadwood caused by a lightning strike, cattle grazing, an avalanche, disease, whatever the cause of the exposure of this deadwood that comes up the trunk and these we call gins of deadwood, that deadwood has a long life. It can stay there for 100 years. It doesn't quickly decompose like the wood of broadleaf trees that doesn't have a lot of resins that tends to rot very, very quickly. And so if you see the junipers in our collection, you'll often see a lot of deadwood, and that's really representative of what you see in nature. And it's another way of showing the eye how old the tree is. This Shimpaku juniper also has a lot of prominent deadwood features, and the live part of the tree is actually on the back. Although this tree can really be displayed from either side. It's has an excellent back. Here you see the cinnamon color vein. That is the live vein. That is the live part of the tree that carries all the sugars and starches down from the leaves, and it carries all the water and the nutrients from the soil up into the tree. This is one of the smaller trees we have in the collection, and for a number of reasons, a publicly displayed collection like this tends to collect a lot of very large bonsai tree specimens. But more typical in size for someone to keep as bonsai are smaller trees. And I brought some trees that sort of run the gamut. This is a very small Japanese black pine, almost what you would call a shohin size, which is anything under about 8 inches. This is the same kind of Japanese black pine as that very large specimen that we have in the corner next to the office, which is about 80 years old, and that takes 2 or 4, even 4 people to move it. And this is the same tree, but a much smaller variety. This is a much smaller bougainvillea than the one we have on display, but the same type, Bougainvillea spectabilis. And we're in San Diego, so it can be in flower rather unpredictably just about any time of the year, and it's in flower right now. This is called a Yaupon holly. It's a Native American, very small-leafed tree or shrub. It's a tree whose leaves are used or were used to make a tea that was drunk as part of a rite of manhood in some Native American tribes. The young men would vomit, and so its scientific name is Ilex vomitoria. It's a very popular bonsai subject. The females, like this one, have red berries. This one is not in fruit right now, but another sexually dimorphous tree where the females have berries and the males don't. This is Japanese garden juniper. It's maybe a typical size for someone to keep as a bonsai tree at home. And since we're talking a little bit about the size of bonsai trees, if you're someone who's interested in starting bonsai as a hobby, it sometimes happens that people think, well, because I'm a beginner, I'm going to start on a very small tree. That's not actually what I recommend. A very small tree requires more high-level attention and skill horticulturally. A small tree like this has a very, very shallow gravity column. drainage is a little bit tricky in a very, very small tree, and also they can dry very rapidly. And so, bonsai in general is sort of horticulture on a knife's edge. If you're starting bonsai, I recommend starting with a medium-sized tree. It's just easier, and then you'll sort of get the hang of it. And if you want to then explore the really small trees, you're more likely to have success and for them not to die. One way that people end up killing a lot of their first bonsais, and I killed my first bonsai, I'm quick to admit, is by keeping bonsais inside. Almost all of these trees, and by the way, you can bonsai hundreds of different species of trees. People basically bonsai any tree that is available and will do well in bonsai culture that's in their area. And so it's kind of a myth that bonsai is limited to pines and junipers. You do see a lot of pines and junipers in Japan, but you also see Japanese maples, fruit trees, all kinds of broadleaf trees. And wherever you go in the world, people are bonsaiing whatever works well. If you want to have a bonsai tree and keep it indoors, there are not a lot of options open to you. Mostly tropical trees. Bougainvilleas will do okay indoors. And ficuses. This is just a Ficus benjamina, a variegated ficus that the same variety you might see as an office plant. I grow it outdoors, but it could be grown indoors. And so if you absolutely need a tree that you're going to keep indoors, do a little bit of investigation to see whether that's a tree that can survive indoors. If it's not a ficus or some other type of tropical tree, it probably can't, and it's going to end in heartbreak. Okay, this is a Femina juniper forest. This is one of our biggest trees. It's not our heaviest tree, but it's probably our second heaviest tree. These Femina junipers could be 30 or 40 feet if they were in the wild. The bonsai artist who made this composition is named Larry Regal, and I met him a couple of years ago, and he said that he put this together at a Festival of Japan exhibition at Disneyland in the early 1980s. It's so heavy that it broke the first pot it was in. One of the things about bonsai trees that makes them different from other works of art is their generational aspect. These trees live, they can live for hundreds of years. There is a bonsai tree at the National Arboretum in Washington, D.C. that was a gift from Japan that is 400 years old, over 400 years old. And the oldest bonsai tree in Japan is about 800 years old. So these trees pass through hands, and each tree is a collaboration over time of different people creating, working, styling on a tree. And it is really always changing, in part because you really can't keep a tree in stasis. It always wants to change. It's constantly growing. And also because you actually want to develop a tree over time to actually make it look more older, build character. And so every tree has a provenance of a tree of any age, of the different owners and creators who created originally and then worked on this tree. And the provenance of this tree is that the man who put it together, Larry Regal, was a student of another bonsai artist named John Naka, who's considered to be the father of American bonsai. And John Naka created some very similar Femina juniper forests, and the most famous is also at the National Arboretum in Washington, D.C. It's called Goshen, and it's a gigantic forest. It looks very, very similar to this. It has more deadwood spires at the top of the forest than this one does. This one just has the one. And so Larry Regal studied under John Naka, and what I've been told is that John Naka also worked on this tree. is the last tree I want to show you. This is a tree that's out of leaf. It's a deciduous tree called Celtis chinensis. It's a Chinese hackberry. And a lot of people will look at the leafless trees in the collection here and wonder if the tree is dead. No, we have a lot of trees that are deciduous. We've got deciduous trees that lose their leaves in the winter. We've got evergreens, which are mostly conifers, the pines and the junipers. And then we've got broadleaf evergreens that are broadleaf, but they keep their leaves all year round. Oaks, olives, camellias. I hope that when the garden reopens and people can safely gather in outdoor settings, that I'll see some of you out here at the garden. We from the Bonsai Club are working on these trees every Wednesday morning and every Saturday morning. If you ever want to come by at a time when there's somebody here that you can ask questions of, you come first thing in the morning at like between 10 and 11:30 on a Wednesday morning or a Saturday morning.